This is Radio Free Pro Wrestling, your home for smart and stunning wrestling debate with lifelong wrestling fans Sean and Ashley. Let the debate begin.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Radio Free Professional Wrestling. I am, of course, Sean with my tag team partner, Ashley. We hope you have enjoyed Money in the Bank and NXT Heatwave. It was one great wrestling weekend in Toronto, Canada. But Ashley, the question coming out of Money in the Bank, was that cash-in by Drew McIntyre the worst cash-in in the history of the Money in the Bank concept?
I don't know if I would rank it the worst. There have been a few very underwhelming ones that came a few years ago. I will say this, I'm not a fan of this, though. I was kind of hoping they would drag this out a little bit. You could have had a lot of, you already got Drew and Punk at each other's throats. You could have had some, really fun cat and mouse type of games with, oh, is Drew going to cash in tonight? With, CM Punk, waiting in the wings to kind of try to screw him over. I felt like they kind of rushed through something that could have been drawn out a little bit.
Honestly, personally, I feel like you could have Punk interfere in the Money in the Bank match to still get to the same concept here. We could have gave that Money in the Bank briefcase off to Carmelo Hayes, Chad Gable, two young talents. Oh, hey, this guy, LA Knight, that we've been on again, off again, pushing for the last 6 months. Hey, we could have done it with him. But at the end of the day, they used the men's briefcase to advance the story of CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre one half level, and we're heading to a match we already knew we were going to get at SummerSlam.
Agreed. And that's kind of I think why everyone is a little bit confused. Like you said, that would have been a far better choice. Have Punk screw him out of the ladder match victory instead of the cash-in itself. I'm not exactly sure why they chose to have Drew win just to have him then lose, but like you said, we're getting the match. Kind of just a weird way of getting there. I feel like it's a little stumble on the road to there, but it should be a good match regardless.
Exactly. So we are going to go quickly through the results of the cards as we go down here. Allow me to go. We already mentioned that Drew McIntyre was the victorious winner of the Money in the Bank briefcase. I think this was my least favorite of the two Money in the Bank matches. I think the women's match was the better of the two from this past weekend. Do you agree with me, Ashley?
Yeah.
Then, if I remember right, I was supposed to riot if Braun Breaker didn't win the IC title, so I guess I need to start rioting now because Sami Zayn was able to defend his IC title. It was a fine match. I could see where this could have gone either way. You couldn't have gave it to Sami and say Braun just was a little too cocky, and that constantly end this match. As we see Sami Zayn basically hit one hula kick, 1, 2, 3, Sami wins clean. But I still think Breaker had a good showing here against Sami Zayn. This is the longest Braun Breaker match I can remember on the main roster.
Yeah, and I agree. This was a good match. I feel like the wrong outcome though, which is kind of how I felt for a couple of the matches on this card, which is they're fine matches. They were good and everything, but I felt like you said, if you were gonna just have Punk screw Drew, give this briefcase to somebody else and not have it be tangled up in the storyline that's already red hot. I feel like maybe we should have taken the opportunity to crown Braun Breaker here. He's kind of been this unstoppable monster. It was kind of weird to just lose very clean to Sami Zayn without there being at least multiple, at least you want to see him get hit, maybe a couple of finishers or something, but it kind of seemed to just be one finisher that took him out.
Well, we'll have to see what happens in a couple minutes here on Monday Night Raw as we're at 7:15 Eastern here on a Monday night as we do the live stream. Let's go on to the next match, as this was the WWE World Heavyweight title match. It started out being Seth Rollins versus Damian Priest in a fine professional wrestling match. Then Drew McIntyre came down to cash in his contract. He cashed in like a baby face, and he made it a triple fact instead of waiting till one guy was down and just hey, referee, contract 1, 2, 3, new champion.
Which again, probably not even a smart decision on Drew after going through a 6-man ladder match.
I mean, true. I do believe you're correct in that assumption, but with a little help from CM Punk here, Damian Priest was able to walk out of Money in the Bank yet again, the champion heading into SummerSlam and a possible date with Gunther. Are you excited for Gunther versus Damian Priest?
I think it should be pretty good. We saw the tear that Gunther was on before this, and it seems like kind of like they have some faith in Damian Priest to carry this championship, as they've kind of put over some of the top guys. So,
well, I will say the one positive we got out of this interaction during this match is the fact that we now have a feud with Seth Rollins and CM Punk, which could be very, very entertaining. Something that I'm looking forward to. After we get done with Drew versus CM Punk, we can just easily slide over to Seth Rollins because Damian Priest won. Seth Rollins cannot challenge for the WWE World Heavyweight title until Damian Priest loses this title.
yeah, so should be interesting, especially with the words they've had in the past.
I can't wait to the promo battle between Seth Rollins and CM Punk. I mean, get my popcorn ready. That's going to be something special. Let's go on to our next match, as the women's Money in the Bank match, to me personally, was the best of the match on that card. And Tiffany Stratton won. And we almost had Chelsea Green being the hometown hero. Also close to that briefcase. And Tiffany just pushes her gently off, and she falls through 2 tables. And we got Tiffany in the bank now.
Yeah, and no matter how gently, that's still one of the scariest bumps I think you can take in wrestling. Like, just that's so high up, and there's nothing there. Yeah, we kind of talked about it. Like, Chelsea Green was kind of like the hopeful, wishing with your heart to win, but I think all signs were pointing to a Tiffany Stratton victory.
Granted, coming into it, I did believe Tiffany was the better of the 2 options between her and Chelsea Green, but that crowd was so behind Chelsea Green. They were literally trying to lift her up each run of that ladder. And I think you could have called the audible here and let her have that briefcase, because later on in the pay-per-view, we saw Tiffany Stratton interact with Trish Stratus, and we got a possibility of a Trish Stratus versus Tiffany Stratton match, hopefully at SummerSlam. Fingers crossed here.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
Okay, so we're on to the main event. It's the 6-man tag match between Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and Cody Rhodes versus the Bloodline. And I gotta say, Solo Sikoa surprised me in getting this pin on Cody, and we're heading off to SummerSlam with Cody versus Solo Sikoa as possibly our main event.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the trajectory we've been headed for. But it was nice to see Jacob be a part of that team. I was saying we should get him in there, and I'm glad we did.
Exactly. I thought it was a fine main event, and it kind of saved the pay-per-view. To me, it's still lukewarm. It may not be the best Money in the Bank pay-per-view we have seen in the last couple of years, but let's advance to Sunday night, because Sunday night, oh wait, before we go, we did get an announcement at Money in the Bank as John Cena made a surprise appearance and announced that he will be returning at the end of 2025. Ashley, what was your first thoughts when you saw Mr. Hustle loyalty and respect?
First of all, I was like, how much are our hearts supposed to take? We've lost Sting this year. We know we're losing like Bryan Danielson and AJ Styles, and now John Cena too. What are you doing to us?
You know, for all the people who have a love and hate relationship with John Cena, it's something to know that this guy has basically a year left in ring before he hangs it up full time in professional wrestling. And later on in this show, we're going to give you our personal 5 list of who he needs to face before he calls it a day. So let's go over to NXT Heatwave, as the pre-show had Carmen Petrovich and Ariana Grace victorious over Jessie Jane and Jasmine Nix. I gotta say, I was wrong. Remember when I made the prediction that maybe the Hills would win here and we would have a bad start to NXT Heatwave? They did the right thing. They had the hometown ladies win, and what a freaking showing by both Ariana Grace and Harmon Pepperovich. I gotta say, great match. But the main opening match to the card is Oba Femi retaining his North American Championship against Wes Lee. And this match was the best match on this card.
Yes, no, definitely a very enjoyable match. And like I said last week when we talked about it, like I wanted to see Oba win in like a dominant, like clear-cut fashion. You know, you don't want to see like any kind of stuff. And I loved it. I loved it. He was just brutal. You know, Wesley used his quickness and everything like that. It just wasn't enough. And Oba looked fantastic.
He did, and I feel like Wesley did a yeoman's work here to get this match out of Oba Femi, because Oba Femi has only been wrestling for a year, and like, look at this dude. Can you imagine what he'd be like in a year and a half from now?
Be scary.
So we move on to the Women's North American Championship as Keontae Jordan retains her title over Soruka. This match had a crowd kind of divided 50-50. Some people loved this match. Other people thought this was just a rehearsed gymnastic routine. Personally, it kind of reminded me of the Will Ospreay versus Ricochet match 5-6 years ago. I enjoyed this. This was a fun babyface matchup, and the champion retained like we thought she would last week.
Yeah, and we talked last week about Soruka's like athletic ability and everything like that. To kind of see it put on full display is very cool, and to see Keilani, like, who I think has kind of surprised me as the champion. Like I liked it. Like you said, like there's some debate over whether you like your wrestling looking a little choreographed or not, but I don't mind it, and I enjoyed it.
Well, honestly, I feel like a good pay-per-view should have a match for everybody. Every type of wrestling should be on it. So that way you have it the broadest match appeal you can have. And I didn't see anything wrong with this match. I thought it was a fine match. You could have brought these two ladies up with maybe having somebody more experienced across the ring from them, but you entered this situation with these two ladies, and this was the best match they could put together.
Yeah, no, I like the call, especially because I think like WWE has like, you know, plans like kind of in the works for these two with the work that they've seen already from these very inexperienced wrestlers. Like, I think they see the potential here, and what better way to see what they've got than putting them into that main event? Well, not the main event, but like in that title scene like that, like, you know, having to rely on each other. Somebody's going to have to learn to take the lead during matches.
Exactly. You have it's basically on the job training here. That's what we saw
Yeah.
last night in this match, is on the job training. And sometimes that's the best way to go about it. So we're up to the NXT Tag Team Championship match, and Axiom and Nathan Fraser did defeat Chase University, Duke Hudson, and Andre Chase. But we saw Andre Chase hit a Canadian Destroyer off the back of Axiom. Like, what the heck?
This is like the Chase Lucha Brothers right there.
I gotta say, I was thinking we would see Nathan Fraser cost Axiom the title here, and we almost did when he super kicked Axiom on accident. I was going, oh, we're going down the road. Nope. The team stays together. They're still the champions, and we head off to NXT on Tuesday night to see what's ahead for Axiom and Nathan Fraser. But this was a fine showing for Chase University, and Chase University is one of those acts where they can eat a loss here and there, and it doesn't hurt them as much as somebody else would.
Yeah, no, and like you said, like we kind of talked about like maybe Axiom and Fraser breaking up, and I'm glad they didn't, and I'm glad that they're going to stay together. Like, keep them a tag team. Like, you know, like I there are times where like you want to see the breakup and you want to see the feud, but I think we should hold off on these two. I think they've kind of clicked as tag team.
That's what was my fear coming into this match, was like, I'm enjoying them too much as a tag team. They're kind of like this fast-paced, kind of like this is going to date me. It's like the Rockers, Shawn Michaels, Marginetti. And you know eventually they're going to split up. And I got a feeling Nathan Fraser is going to be the Shawn Michaels throwing Axiom through something to cause this breakup. But right now, I'm just enjoying this tag team, and there's a lot of tag teams in NXT they can face and have some good matches with. I would love to see a replay of the Good Brothers versus Axiom and Nathan Fraser for the tag team titles.
Yeah, definitely do something like that. Like I said, I just think it would kind of be the best for them right now. I think they're very over, and I think you should kind of keep working with them as a tag team and kind of run with them as the champions for now.
Okay, I gotta say, this match coming up for the women's NXT title between Roxanne Perez and Lola Vice was a dang good match. And I gotta say, I think the table won over both of these ladies because we saw the pop rocks on the announcer table. I felt bad for Lola Vice because that table did no give to it. But this was a excellent match, and the champion retained. We were kind of 50-50 on if she would retain because this lady is so good. We're just counting down the days to she's on the main roster.
Yeah, and I kind of was like, maybe they'll pull off the shock, but after the match, I think I'm kind of glad they kept it on Roxanne. I think I kind of like to see her kind of continue with this until I think they'll be ready to call her up.
I think we're holding off until we see Julia make her debut in NXT, and I feel like Julia is going to be the one to take the title from Roxanne. So we're just running through opponents right now for Roxanne Perez until we get Julia in NXT and we get to see that dream match.
Probably right.
Okay, so the main event, we saw All Eagle Ethan Page win the NXT Championship. I gotta say, they had a creative way to get this title because we see Trick Williams nail his finisher. It bounces Ethan Page into Shawn Spears, knocks him off the rope, and Evans is already on the ground. Ethan falls onto Evans. 1, 2, 3. And we saw Shawn Spears pull Trick so he couldn't get to break that pin up. You protect your champion. You give your champion an excuse for a rematch. And Shawn Spears has an excuse because he didn't give him either. There's a lot of stories coming out of this. And we have Ethan Page as your NXT World Champion. How do you feel about that?
I thought it was very good. And I thought that was kind of like perfect. You have like two newer guys who have been working at it and two very experienced guys who have been at it for a long time. I think they balanced each other out very well. And I like the finish because I don't think anybody wanted to see Trick Williams get pinned after the reign and the run he's been on. So it's a nice way to get the title off him, put it on this, like, you know, they see the attraction of Ethan Page in the way they're using him. So a nice way to kind of put it on a heel. And like you said, like now there's like 3 or 4 storylines that you can kind of mess around with coming out of this to angle where Page goes next.
Exactly. And if you watch the end of the show, a certain person, you say his name, his picture appears. Joe Henry's picture appears at the end of this pay-per-view. And I'm going, Ethan Page versus Joe Henry? That'd be fun too.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. We know Ethan Page is no stranger to TNA, so let the crossover begin.
Exactly. So that has been your pay-per-view wrap-up here on Radio Free Professional Wrestling. We are heading over to our stunning 6 questions of the week.
Time to ring the bell. As Sean and Ashley debate 6 stunning questions from the week of wrestling. All the whys. And what the hell was that?
And hello, Andy, as we are live here on Monday night. Andy is one of my coworkers at work. You want to say hello to Andy? Nice to see you pop in here and say hello to us here on Radio Free Professional Wrestling. So, Ashley,
Hello,
my first stunning question for you is going to be: was the cash-in that Drew did at Money in the Bank, was it a waste of a cash-in, or are we still okay with him cashing in to advance his story?
I said it earlier. I'm going to stick with it. I'm not a fan of the call. I understand the angle they're going for with it. I'm just personally not a fan of it. Like I said, I would have rather see it get drawn out a little bit, or like you said, have Punk get screw Drew over earlier in the show to cost him the briefcase altogether and put that on somebody who could actually, I think, use it more than Drew McIntyre, who's already like cemented as a top guy right now.
So I am with you. I feel like I said during the opening of the show, I would rather give it to Carmelo Hayes, or I would rather give it to Chad Gable, so we can have a story with those two guys elevating themselves to the main event status. That's what usually is done with the Money in the Bank contract. And we already had this story going with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre basically costing each other a chance at the title. We didn't need the step. This is like a repeat. It's like hitting that chorus for the second time. We don't need it. We already know the story.
Yeah, and I even, like you said, like earlier, like LA Knight would have been a great choice, like to get that instead. I don't know if there's some other plan or something else they have up their sleeve, like, you know, for this. But as of right now, I'm definitely not a fan of the call.
Well, we'll have to see how that goes. And we'll go on to my next stunning question for you. We got to talk about our friend MJF, because back on Wednesday night on Dynamite, the old MJF came back. And boy, did Daniel Garcia become the passion of Daniel Garcia, because he literally laid the waste to Daniel Garcia.
Yeah, that was nuts. He laid into Daniel Garcia, and then even went off on his promo this week and was talking about how when he lost his championship, we cheered for Joe and stuff like that. I'm glad to see MJF back as a heel. I think he is a good face as well, but I think his best work is as a heel. So I'm interested to see where we go. I'm hoping we get to see a little more in-ring stuff from him coming soon, though. We've had a lot of like promo segments and things like that. I'd like to see him get into a match.
True, but I like the fact that on Collision, he comes out and cuts that promo. They throw back to a segment back in the winter where he's babyface MJF. And he's talking about, guys, I have this disorder, this rejection disorder. And if something happens and you guys reject me, dun, 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 here we are. And he literally lays out the reason he turns back to the old MJF is because the fans forgot him. Because he was rehabbing and looking at Samoa Joe on TV. And the fans going, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. So the reason we got this old MJF is because he's heartbroken. And just like Adam Cole has stolen his joy, the fans have stolen his joy. And he's out for revenge.
Yeah, and he's starting with, I would say, young fan favorite Daniel Garcia, it seems. So I'm very interested because Daddy Magic did a promo in response saying that like Red Death Daniel Garcia is coming back. So it seems like we're going to be getting a more serious and focused Daniel Garcia on his return.
Oh, if you haven't seen Daddy Magic's response to the attack on Daniel Garcia, you need to go check that out, because that was one heck of a promo. And
that man is a hidden gem on promos.
I want to see him versus MJF coming out of that one he did on Wednesday night. That's what it made me want to see, is MJF versus Daddy Magic.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that like it'll be like a lead-up match for the eventual MJF Daniel Garcia, because I'm not gonna lie, I love Daddy Magic.
Well, let's move on to our third Sunday question of the week. And this is going to be a little hard for you, my friend, because we're going to predict the men's and women Owen Hart Cup winners. And we'll start with the men's match. Are you going with Heyman Adam Page or the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson? Both your favorites. You got to choose one.
I'm picking Hangman. I don't think Bryan Danielson will allow himself to be in the title picture. But I'm very excited for this, and Hangman's return has been just my favorite thing going right now. His like break with this stuff, seemingly mentally with Swerve, and how the fans have embraced Swerve, even though Swerve screwed Hangman over. I am definitely excited to see like full blown heel Hangman versus like babyface Swerve Strickland, and I feel like that'll be the match we get it All In.
I feel like that's the way we're going, and I'm going to pick Heyman Adam Page to beat the American Dragon here coming up on Wednesday night, because we're heading to AEW All In. And it's funny because even though Heyman Adam Page is going to be the heel in this story, he's a very justifiable heel, because we have to remember Swerve Strickland did a lot of bad things to Heyman Adam Page on the way out in 2023. So interesting story. It's going to be a great match. And Hangman versus the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, I can't wait for Wednesday. It's going to be a great freaking match.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this one. especially because they have like a 1-1-1 record. So
Now, on the women's side, we have Willow Nightingale versus Mariah May. Another set of your favorites. Who are you going to pick?
I feel like we might get some shenanigans in this one. I feel like we might get a Stokely or a Statlander appearance to cost Willow, but I feel like Mariah May is kind of the obvious pick for the Toni Storm story, and it's seemingly heading to them facing each other. I do feel like it is a bit strange because we haven't had that breakup moment between them. They've seemed to been bonded closer than ever now. So I don't know if we'll keep this as like a babyface versus babyface, or if somebody will eventually turn after the Owen is finished.
I'm going to keep with the story of Mariah May advancing towards the inevitable date with Toni Storm and it being in London. And eventually, is the title the thing that Toni Storm loves more than Mariah May? Or is it the reverse and Mariah May is what she loves more than the title? Because I feel like Toni Storm is going to be the one that turns on Mariah May. Because I don't think the crowd would boo Mariah May.
Yeah, especially the run she's been on, being in her home country. I don't think there's a chance she gets booed.
Exactly. I can't wait for this match coming up on Wednesday night. I do believe these both are going to be great matches. And I love the fact that this year the Owen has some stakes in it as the winners get a title shot at AEW All In.
Yeah, I think that automatically makes it kind of like a step up from years past.
Very, very true. And we're moving on to our fourth standing question of the week. Who do you see Tiffany Stratton cashing in on? Is it going to be Bayley, or are we going to go over to Raw and it be Liv Morgan?
I think I'd like to see it be Bayley.
Honestly, I feel like Bayley would be the better option if you want a good professional wrestling match. Me being kind of greedy, I want to see her on Raw and her wrestle Liv Morgan and get the title off of Liv Morgan, but I know that's not going to be the story because we're just waiting for Rhea Ripley to come back to get her revenge on Liv Morgan. So I feel like that briefcase and Tiffany Stratton is going to stay on Friday Night SmackDown.
Yeah, I mean, that would be okay. I mean, we don't have a men's briefcase going forward now for the rest of the foreseeable future of this year, so maybe let Tiffany carry it around for a while. Maybe the landscape changes in a few months and we have a new matchup on the horizon.
Exactly. I do believe that would be the best course of action. She doesn't have a cash in just so yet. She could be like Damian Priest. She can hold on to it until WrestleMania and cash it in at WrestleMania on somebody and have a WrestleMania match.
Yeah, and like I said, with only the one briefcase being in play for the rest of the year, kind of have her, she's heel, have her kind of taunted out, am I going to cash it in and am I not,
Okay, so we're moving on to the fifth standing question of the week. Do you agree with the ESPN list of top wrestlers of 2024 so far? Now, the men's number one wrestler is Cody Rhodes. The women's number one wrestler is Bayley. Ashley, do you agree with this, or you have somebody else in mind?
I understand it, but nobody's telling me Bryan Danielson isn't the best wrestler of the year. No, I understand. I completely understand why Cody would be top guy, especially with the storyline and everything he's had going through this year.
I agree with you. I mean, Cody has had a good run leading into WrestleMania, finally being able to defeat Roman Reigns, finishing his story. So I can see him being the number one male wrestler so far in 2024. My problem is Bayley being the women's representative. It has to be Mommy. It has to be Rhea Ripley. I mean, Rhea Ripley, up to her injury, had the best dominant run of a woman professional wrestler in either of them two major companies in North America.
This one's tough because there's genuinely so many women that deserve to be on this list this year. And when we go down to it, I don't understand Rhea Ripley's placement on this list at all. She certainly deserves to be much higher than she is. But I can understand Bayley too. She had the Damage Control storyline, everything they did together, then the breakup and the fallout. I will say she has been a little like it doesn't seem like as prominent since that, but I definitely understand. Like her in-ring ability is top notch. She's very good, and she's had one of the best women's storylines I think this year.
Exactly. So we'll move on to the sixth and final stunning question of the week, and it's going to be: would you rather see Stephanie McCure in WWE or AEW? As reportedly, both companies are interested to have her services.
I did not even know she was going to be a free agent until I read this. Like I feel like she would be a huge loss for CMLL if she, and it seems like it's inevitable at this point when these reports and rumors start kind of circling around. You know me, I'm gonna be greedy. I could see her coming into AEW, but I mean, WWE just signed Julia, and we know there's some history there, so maybe she would want to follow somebody like Julia and kind of continue what they were doing. I could see her fitting in, like, even if she went to NXT, like, she could definitely help with some of the ladies there, but I would say you would have to push her on the main roster if she signs with WWE, because like you and I said a few weeks ago, we haven't seen much of her, but what we have seen has been just too impressive.
Well, I'm going to go NXT because I feel like NXT would be a good start for her, and just like you do with Julia, you give her a quick stay in NXT, then you bring her up to the main roster around Royal Rumble. Can you imagine her main roster debut being at the Royal Rumble?
That would be like the dream, I guess, for the Royal Rumble debut.
I mean, she could basically have the Jade Cardio spot from this past Rumble where she eliminates like 4, 5, 6 people before she gets eliminated. You create this big buzz around Stephanie McCure. People go online, they go back and look at her matches, and they just sit there and think, who could she face at WrestleMania? There you go.
And there would be a crazy list because, like I said, it's crazy that I feel like the women's divisions in kind of all the companies here, TNA, WWE, AEW, have all been on fire, and some of them for a while. Like, we know how good TNA has had, their women's roster has always been. WWE has certainly built up theirs over the past, like I'd say 10, 15 years or so. And AEW, through this past, year and a half, has really made a focus on the women's division.
Exactly. So that has been our Stunning 6 questions this week on Radio Free Professional Wrestling. We are doing something a little different this week on Radio Free Professional Wrestling. Normally, we do our top 5 matches of the week, but since John Cena announced his retirement over the weekend, me and Ashley came up with a top 5 list of who we would want John Cena to wrestle before he calls it a day. We're going to go through Ashley's list first. And Ashley, I'm going to start with the most interesting choice I thought you made. And that's going to be John Cena versus the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, DA's Tanahashi. Tell me why.
So I feel like these are two guys who kind of started around a similar time, became very big and like a staple in their respective companies around the same time, have had some of the biggest careers. I feel like they've always respected each other's work. They've almost sort of always been linked to oh, this could be like a dream match. And I feel like with all of these, forbidden doors and prohibited portals being opened, why not? Now would be the chance. If John Cena is about to call it quits, we know Tanahashi is kind of on his last run. We saw it this month getting knocked out of even the G1 this year. I would love to see kind of these two guys who have had kind of similar career paths and popularity for their respective companies clash in what could be one of the coolest matches in crossovers of all time.
I gotta say, when I saw you put his name on this list, I was like, ooh, that would be fun. And boy, that'd be a match that a lot of people would never think we would be able to see. And if we were able to pull it off in 2025, I'd be all for it. So your second choice you gave me was one that's going to be on my list a little bit later. It's Uncle Howley, Bo Dallas. And I feel like we both had the same reason. It's because the history of Cena with Bo's brother. Is that the reason why we have this on our list?
Yeah, especially because it was such a big, prominent feud that gave us a lot of these characters that, like Bray Bray Wyatt's character was kind of like referring to, like the, you know, like the Sister Abigail, the Rambling Rabbit and stuff like that. So I could definitely see them doing something very cool with this Wyatt Six faction and having like this ultimate like Cena versus Uncle Howdy match, and kind of like, I think it would be a very cool way to like also tribute for Bray.
I do too, and I feel like Cena would be wanting to at least have a little interaction with the Wyatt Six on his way out, since he had that interaction with Bray, and literally, I think Bray's last WrestleMania match was that cinematic match he had with John Cena, where it was a little different. A lot of people didn't like it at the time, but looking back on it, it was entertaining, and it was able to show John Cena being able to make fun of himself.
Yeah. No, and that's why I kind of picked him. I know you said he's on your list as well, but that was all I could think of immediately was like that. Like, it's funny that, like you said, like people kind of had their opinions about the match at the time, but like when I think of like Bray Wyatt, when I think of him, like that's one of the first like feuds and matches that comes to my mind.
Well, the next person on your list is the face that runs the place sometimes, as we get another John Cena versus AJ Styles match. And you know what? I'm all here for it, because this was a fun match when AJ Styles debuted in WWE back in the day. And I can't believe that AJ Styles has been in the company as long as he has now. And one more Cena AJ Styles feud, please. Yes, and thank you.
Yeah, I mean, especially like I said earlier, like AJ Styles has made his plans clear in that he doesn't really intend to continue wrestling all that much. Let these two go out and have one more, just, you know, for old time's sake. I think, like, we already know, like, AJ Styles is one of the best wrestlers, like, in the world. So him and John Cena coming back to kind of have this, like, one last time for both of them, I think that could be money.
I gotta say, that's money that I'll be willing to fork down to see this freaking match. Now, the next person on your list will appear on my list, as we both think that Cena versus Carmelo Hayes needs to happen in 2025 before Cena calls it a day. Ashley, tell me why.
I think Carmelo is the future. I think he is a guy they should be putting some chips on, and I think Cena working with him on his way out is just a no-brainer to give him like to get him to the next level.
You know, when I saw Carmelo Hayes get called up to SmackDown, get drafted #1 overall to SmackDown, I was like, they have a plan, they have a vision. And so far, it's been Carmelo Hayes eating loss after loss after loss. He needs a signature win. And what bigger signature win to give your young future heel than a victory over John freaking Cena?
Yeah, like Cena on his way out. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. There can be some shenanigans. Melo's the heel. I think that would be like the biggest rub he could get, honestly.
Well, your fifth and final choice is also a classic John Cena foil, as we go down to John Cena versus Randy Orton one last time.
I feel like you gotta. Their careers and time in WWE are so inextricably linked. I feel like this is like a must-have on this list.
Well, you got to know, I mean, like, they come from that dream class out of OVW, Ohio Valley Championship Wrestling, as it was Orton, Cena, Shelton Benjamin, Brock Lesnar. And as you go for the years now, we have whittled that class down. And in the WWE, it's basically Cena and Orton who's left. And I got to say, Orton versus Cena one last time would be a fine match. Maybe that's Cena's partner in his final match ever, and that's how Cena walks off from professional wrestling.
Yeah, something like that. I feel like Orton's going to be involved somehow.
I gotta say, that was a nice selection on your part. So allow me to introduce you to my list. We already hit my #1 pick. It was Carmelo Hayes, and like I said before, when we were talking about Ashley's picks, Carmelo Hayes needs a freaking signature win. And what better win to give him than a victory over John Cena? So my #2 pick for you. Hang on a second. Yeah. Oh, I missed my #2 pick. Oh, okay. So we'll do this. My #3 pick is All Eagle Ethan Page, the current NXT champion. I never believed until about 24 hours ago, after Cena announced his retirement, that we could possibly see Ethan Page versus John Cena, and now I want it.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, Ethan Page has done super well for himself in NXT, and it could be a very cool match we've never seen before.
Very true. And I'm gonna go with Andy here for my number 2 pick that I actually didn't put on my list. I'll take Cody or Gunther to add to this John Cena wish list. Andy, good choices. John Cena versus Gunther. John Cena versus Cody Rhodes. Yes. Okay, sign me up. I'm all for it. So getting back to my
good choice.
Oh, Cena versus Gunther. Can you imagine Cena versus Gunther in Berlin? We've been thinking it's going to be a world title match. It could be a world title match as Gunther as the champion versus John Cena. Let's let that one sink in for a couple days. That'd be something we would be talking about in a couple episodes on Radio Free Professional Wrestling, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Now back to my list. My number 4 pick was one that you said as well as Bo Dallas. Simply for the fact that he has a history with both Rotunda brothers. And I got a feeling that he's going to do something with Bo to get Bo over. And I feel like maybe it could be a possible WrestleMania feud where you have the Wyatt Six defeat Cena, and that's how Cena retires from professional wrestling.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I think John Cena is obviously very open to doing the kind of weird stuff and the kind of unorthodox stuff that the Wyatt family, the Wyatt Six, has done in the past and is doing right now. So I think him on his way out, working with this kind of new group and having a kind of a tribute to Bray without it being a direct tribute could be one of the coolest things they put together in a while.
Okay, so my last choice on my list, say his name and he appears. So John Cena versus Joe Hendry, because everybody believes in Joe Hendry. And can you imagine Joe Hendry versus Mr. Hustle, Loyalty, and Respect? It could be Bound for Glory. It could be a WWE pay-per-view. Let's just do it.
Yeah, honestly, it's all the fan support. I could see dueling chants going for days.
I gotta say, I don't know who would be the heel in this match. I don't think anybody would be able to boo anybody in this match. Cena may be quasi the heel here, as everybody wants to get Joe Hendry into the WWE, and they're gonna be cheering mad for Joe Hendry. I just want to see this chaos.
I think you could keep them both babyface, especially it's kind of as goofy as Joe Hendry is, with the big smile and the as he turns around all the time. I could definitely see them working that into it, and John Cena's always been funny, so he could definitely play off that, and I think you could just have them both be 2 pretty funny baby faces going into it, but having a very good in-ring match.
You know what? What we need is Joe Hendry to do John Cena's intro song, because Joe Hendry has a very long history of making custom intro songs for his opponents. And I can't wait to see what he would come up for John's freaking Cena.
Yeah, that would be good.
So, you know what? Let us know. Leave your pick in the comments below here on our YouTube channel. And next week, we'll go through them and see who you want to see John Cena's the last 5 opponents be. So, Ashley, before we leave this week on Radio Free Professional Wrestling, where can we find you on the information superhighway?
I am usually on Twitter, and it's at groovy_ash_, and on there is a bunch of a list of other socials that I have around the web.
Okay, so you can always follow this show on Twitter at Radio Free PW. You can go to www.radiofreeprofessionally.com to catch up on the latest podcast episode. If you have enjoyed this video presentation of Radio Free Professional Wrestling, hit the like button, subscribe, tell a friend. We'll appreciate it. And until we see you next week on Radio Free Professional Wrestling, stay stunning. Have a great week.